Hello there and welcome back to our channel, Pay Down Debt Solutions. I'm Jen, and sometimes you get Dan. Dan is my counterpart and my husband, and he also runs Velocity Banking Strategies for you. So today, you guys, I want to break things down and make things very, very simple for you. I want to talk about Velocity Banking in its simplest form and how to keep yourself from being overwhelmed, because you guys, life is tough enough without being overwhelmed by our finances. So let's not do that. Let's not be overwhelmed by things that we can break down and make very simple. So velocity banking is a very simple strategy. Later on, after I'm going to break things down for you and kind of go over the basics of velocity banking, I'm going to break it down in very simple terms so that you're not confused. We're going to peel back a little bit and go over it. I do want to bring up the workshop. I'm sorry if I'm redundant, but I want to say we've gotten an outpouring of people that are really interested in the workshop. So if you're interested, make sure you send an email and get your registration link back, because I will send you a link back so that you can get registered. Currently, we're working on July 26th, and we're looking to add some after that into August. We will be gone on vacation the first week of August, though, so there won't be one that first week. However, if you guys want to get in, please email me, let me know. I will also ask, our next workshop on the 20th, if they are okay with us maybe videoing a portion of it so that we can give you guys, a sneak peek into what it looks like when we're in a workshop situation, okay? I want to keep things anonymous though, and I don't want to, put anybody on display. So that's why, why we don't record them, okay? So you get when you do a coaching call with us, you get a recorded link of the entire coaching call so that you have your plan, on record for you, right? So you have that. But, in things like a workshop, and I don't want to put that out there unless these guys are okay with it. And maybe we'll shoot it from the side so nobody can see anybody's face. Maybe we'll do that. But I will ask, I'm not going to just do that to you guys, just so you know that. I would never do that. Now, we did have a winner for our drawing, and I will be contacting this person. Their first name is Yumari, and I want to let them know that they are going to get a free coaching call from us, because we had a wonderful, wonderful student of ours that did a coaching call with us, and she's paying it forward. So we want to express our gratitude for that. Thank you so very much. That was a wonderful thing to do. And for our winner here, for the person that we are giving the free coaching to, that our student is paying for, you are so valued. And I just want to make sure you guys all know that we do this again for you. All right. So again, that workshop, you guys, if you want, just send me an email and I will send you the registration link. First come, first serve at this point. Okay. But then we're working on the next workshop as well. So velocity banking is a very simple strategy. I want to break it down into some very simple terms for you and talk about the things that become really important and really relevant. One of them being your budgeting and timing. Okay, so these are very important things that I want to talk about. And I want you guys to simplify your life. Stop making things so complicated. They don't have to be, okay? I know that when you're sitting at your finances and you're looking at things and you're feeling completely overwhelmed. How do I know that? Shoot, Dan and I did it, right? We were there, we were feeling totally overwhelmed. And, we sat there, pulling our hair out, fighting and bickering all the time because we were trying to figure out what in the world we were going to do. That is not the case anymore, simply because we found a different way to run our finances. You guys, velocity banking is a different way to run your banking finances, right? Your banking strategy. So right now, what you do is you're putting money into a checking account, you're paying all your bills out of the checking account, and at the end of the day, you have nil left over. You don't have anything left over because you haven't learned a different way to run finances. And we do it with velocity banking. We do it through lines of credit. So yes, those, wonderful and awful things called credit cards, right? That people are so afraid of. Well, I love credit cards, you guys. Number one, they help us fight interest. And how do they help us fight interest? Well, those rewards cards out there have interest. And I was looking around trying to find my credit cards because I had them here. I was going to pull them up for you. Anyway, so they defeat interest by giving us cash rewards back sometimes, like the Amazon card. I love that card. Amazon card is great because you earn all these points, right, for Amazon purchases. Dan sometimes wants to, smack me because we've got packages arriving like every other day, right, from Amazon. And he's like, why are you buying all this stuff, Jen? And I'm put my hands on my hips and I'm like, Dan, these are things I'm going to be buying anyway at the store. It's just I find them for a better price on Amazon, plus we get rewards. And then he's like, okay, fine, whatever, right? So sometimes we have to explain to our spouses what we're doing, right? So that's what I do. Anything that I'm going to be purchasing anyway, if I can find a better deal on Amazon, shoot, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to earn points for it, right? So I'm going to then defeat the interest that my card might have if I wasn't paying it off. So if you're going to buy it anyway, you guys, my suggestion is use that credit card to get your points, get those the cash back, whatever, and defeat your interest, right? Work down that interest with points. So that's just another thing that, that we like to do, and, how we can run our finances and make things a little bit easier for ourselves. But it's those lines of credit that help us work down our debts. And they help us do that by giving us payments back, by putting our income into them and running all of our expenses out and alleviating payments for ourselves, okay? The other card I heard out there too, you guys, and you'll have to fill me in on this, the Costco card. I hear it's amazing. So that's another one I might be having to look into. Sorry, side note, tangent. Anyway, so velocity banking is a simple strategy, right? And it is with some important details. So these important details are, and Dan has talked about this in a prior video where he did an excellent job going over and explaining the timing of some of these tools, okay? So timing your payments becomes important, especially if you are really close to that limit, okay? So if you're working that limit, you're trying to work your debts down, your expenses down, then timing becomes very, very important. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is I had somebody write a comment and they said, what do you mean you can't use lines of credit to pay credit cards? Well, let me explain that further. Now, if you're talking about a home equity line or a personal line of credit, absolutely, you can use your lines of credit to pay down those payments for your credit cards, okay? Or you can envelop them into that line. Now, you cannot pay a credit card with a credit card, okay? Yes, there are ways you can do it, right? But they're going to cost you an interest percentage, and a lot of times it doesn't make sense. So you can, though, in those cases, either do a split card strategy where you're putting income into two cards, okay, and paying expenses out of those cards, thus alleviating those payments by getting those payments back to you by putting more in than is required by that card issuer, thus, right, satisfying that payment. When you satisfy that payment, okay, and you by overpaying it, by putting more money onto that card, that payment is no longer owed because you just paid a chunk payment, right? You just paid a bunch more money. And so when you do that, you get that payment back as cash flow, which helps you work down your debt, okay? And I'll go into this a little bit more, in the future here. All right. So timing your payments becomes very, very important, and we're going to talk about timing a little bit today. I'm also going to talk to you guys about understanding the possible need for using the micropay strategy. You guys, the micropay strategy can become very important, especially when you're working with maxed credit cards, okay? Now, it depends. There's a lot of factors that go into whether or not you're going to need the micropay strategy or not. For example, when Dan and I had our cards really maxed, when we were running our businesses and had them really maxed, okay, a couple years ago, we didn't have to do the micropay strategy because our credit score hadn't been dinged to a point where they were nervous about us, right? So we could still make large deposits, large payments, and we didn't get our limits cut. I'm actually kind of surprised that didn't happen to us, to be honest with you, because we were right there. So we were right with all of you. No joke, you guys, we were there, all right? So if you think I don't have a clue about what you're talking about, you're 100% wrong. We were there. We felt everything you're feeling, every bit of it. Now, the advantage that I had, and I still have over many of you, I'm an ex-banker, I'm an ex-branch manager, okay? I understand how these tools work. I understood overpaying cards and that satisfies the payment. But what I didn't understand is how that could change somebody's life, how impactful that can be, and how you can use it to work down your debt. I didn't understand that until I learned velocity banking. Where did I learn it? On YouTube, of course, right? Right with all of you, where you're learning this, unless you're coming to me from my Facebook page. So anyway, so that's how I learned it. That's how I understand how these tools work, okay? So we were right there, and like I said, I'm really surprised that didn't happen to us, but I have been told, and I can't say if this is true or not for sure, but it makes some logical sense, that because our credit score hadn't dropped, too much, and we were consistently making payments, that is why we didn't have to then deploy the micropay strategy. And at the time, I wouldn't have known how to do it anyway, and I would have been in a world of hurt, okay? So let's go into that for a second here. I do want to talk to you guys about that. So let me grab my board. And sorry, I know that I'm stepping off camera for a minute. Now, I know I bring this out quite a bit, but it is incredibly, incredibly important. Sorry about the hot spot, guys. I'm trying to, make sure I have enough lighting for you guys. So anyway, so the micropay strategy, let me step up here so you can see it. Okay, so let's say you have 20? Apparently I can't read backwards. 1620 is your available income to put on your credit card. So what you're going to do is you're going to divide that by 15. Why? Because that's every other day, right? If there's approximately 30 days in the month, we're going to put in a payment about every other day, okay? So you do this because you're trying to keep that algorithm from tripping so that your card doesn't become, your limit doesn't get cut, okay? So they will cut limits if they're nervous about you, okay? So if there's some reason that they're nervous about you, they're going to cut your limit. And if they do that, then you guys don't have as much money to work with, right? So that's kind of robbing you of your money. So what happens is you're going to put 108, and I believe that's 108. Yeah, I think so. Okay, so you're going to put 108 on that card every other day approximately. Now, something you want to keep note of is that if you make a payment on a Saturday and then you make a payment on a Monday, it is making a payment on a Monday. Okay, so both of those payments are going to add up to that Monday payment. So I want you to be aware of that. So then it would be like a double payment. So try not to do that. So if you're going to make a payment on a Saturday, know it's going to hit on a Monday. So maybe you make a Monday and a Tuesday payment, or a Tuesday and a Wednesday, or whatever, right? Okay, so anyway, so you're going to split your payments every other day so that they don't cut your limits, because like I said, they will get nervous about you if your credit score is dropping and maybe you've skipped a payment or you've been late paying, over and over again. Then you're more susceptible to becoming a risk for them, so that they probably will start to cut your limits if you make a big chunk payment. So you can make a chunk payment, right? You're just going to split it all up, all right? So that is why, let me put this back. Again, I apologize for stepping off. So that is why you want to work with the micropay strategy. Test it out, try it. It's not going to hurt you, right? And so actually, it might actually help you in a timing situation too. It might actually kind of help you, so you start thinking ahead about payments that you might have in the future, so that you're ready for them. Okay, so you're ready for these payments. All right, so that is the reason why you may need the micropay strategy. That is because if the bank is getting nervous about you, and there are reports coming back that your credit score is dropping, you're slow paying, or you're late paying, or you're not paying your minimum amount, that could be a reason why. Okay, so here's where I want to talk about when you guys get into the weeds. Okay, so velocity banking, you can get deep into the weeds at times, right? And sometimes it's necessary, and sometimes it is not. Okay. Sometimes maybe taking a step back and looking at the overall picture makes more sense, all right? And so I want to do that with you guys today. I know some of you are getting bogged down into the details and into the weeds, but let's take a step back for a minute and let's look at the overview, and then we'll start drilling into it a little bit more so that you feel comfortable, because I don't want you guys stressing out about this, okay? It is an incredible strategy and it works incredibly well, but let's take it a piece at a time and a part at a time, and let's look at the things that are important to us, all right? Timing is important for many of you. Timing is going to be very important, okay? Now, again, whether you're coming to me with $5,000 monthly income or $25,000 monthly income, we are all in the same boat, okay? So you may not be poor at $25,000, you may not be poor at $5,000, but you may feel that way based on the payments that you have to make. A $5,000 income problem is just as crazy stressful as a $25,000 income problem, because either way, you're stressed about your future, right? I mean, either way you are. So I mean, I get it, you guys, I get it. And Dan gets it. And you guys just, understand that we're all in the same boat. No matter what you make, doesn't matter. All right. Okay, so detail's good, but don't overcomplicate your plan. This is where I'm going to bring in my easy budget strategy, okay? We do have worksheets for this if you guys want to grab them from us and work some strategies, work your velocity banking strategy by implementing your easy budget so you can see the bigger picture a little better. This might help you quite a bit, okay? So again, it's not overcomplicated. You don't have to necessarily have these really complicated budgeting apps out there. If they're helpful to you, awesome, then use them. If you're stressed out about them because they're asking you all these questions and you just have no idea, then do this. This is much simpler. Okay, so we're going to get into this in a second. All right, so don't be overwhelmed. I want you to take one step at a time. Also, break down your monthly bills into weekly sections, right? So what is due now, all right? What is due now? What is due before my next paycheck, okay? And that's where this is going to come into play, all right? So let's talk about our easy budget strategy. So we'll write it down here. So it's easy, right? Easy budget. All right, so easy budget strategy. So you have basically a calendar, right? So this is a calendar. So we've got our weeks, week 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we've got our target amount, and we've got the amount that we have spent, okay? So target amount for the month, and then the month that, or in the amount that you have spent so far. Now, our strategy, our easy budget worksheets that we have, if you're on Excel, they're going to calculate it for you, okay? So Excel will calculate it for you. If not, we have the PDF files that you just have to hand calculate. It's not a big deal, you guys. You're smart, use your noggin, right? Calculator, I use a calculator. Dan does not, he's crazy. So anyway, so we've got groceries here. This is my example. I've got groceries, I've got gas, I've got utilities, I've got a mortgage, I've got cars, and I've got my stuff, which is your allowance. If you give yourself allowance, this is what it looks like, okay? So if my groceries, my target is $1,800, and let's say I break that down per week by $450. So I'm allowing myself $450 a week to keep on budget, on task, on target with what I'm allowing. So that means $1,800 is what I'm allowing for the month. If I break it down into $450 a week, then that means I'm writing in what I'm spending per week. Now, if you're working off of a credit card, you guys, this is the most simple thing in the world, right? Because that credit card, you're going to go into your statement. You're going to go in online, not your statement. You're going to go in online, or statement if you don't get online, I guess, right? You're going to look at the breakdown. You're going to say, okay, here's my groceries. Here's Meijer, for those of us in Michigan. Here's Walmart, for those of you down south. Here's Kroger. Here's Publix. I don't know, Dixie, something or other. Anyway, so whatever grocery store you go to, you're going to see that listed. You're going to see how much you've spent, right? It's going to be there in real time for you if you're looking online, or it'll be on your statement. So you're going to see what you've spent. Love the credit card. Love that I can see this real time, right? Because then I know what I've spent on my groceries, and am I on track or am I not? Have I overspent, right? So if my groceries are $450 and I hit it week 1, yes, awesome, amazing, I hit it, right? So week 2, if I've got $380 here and my target was $450, sweet, I've just banked some money, right? So I've just banked some. Week 3, $450 is what I allowed myself. I spent $440. Again, I banked some more money. So then week 4, my allowance was for my groceries, or I should say, is $450. I have spent $460. So I overspent that week, didn't I? So I overspent. But on the monthly totals, I'm at $1,730, correct? And I've spent $1,730, but my target was $1,800. So what have I done for myself? Haven't I just given myself an extra $70? So what can I do with that? Well, I can put it somewhere else that I might need it. Or if I'm running a velocity banking strategy, it's just going right back into my debt destroyer to help me work down more debt. Love that, right? So I'm helping myself every step along the way. But let's say, shoot, Peyton has to go to a birthday party and I need $30 extra that I haven't allotted for because maybe I've spent my allowance for the week. Maybe I've done that, or the month. No, the week, sorry, the week. So maybe then I can take $30 of this and move it over here mentally, right? Because it's all coming out of that card. And I know I'm still okay, right? Because I've taken 30 from there. So I have 40 extra that I'm still banking, but I had to move $30 over here to pay for a gift, okay? So you just have to think like that. You guys, it's pretty simple. We're just moving things, right? We're just shifting things a little bit. Okay, so then you're gonna do the same thing with your gas. And if I have a $500 target and I break it down to $125 a week, maybe it's 2 cars, maybe it's 1 car, whatever, maybe it's 3 cars, I don't know. So, you're breaking it down weekly, there's your target, all right? And again, you're gonna calculate what you've spent, so that's a running target, okay? Utilities, you break it down. Now, utilities, you're going to have, weeks where bills are coming out that are more than others. You might have 1 week with nothing, 1 week with a ton of stuff coming out, right? So this is just kind of an average for you, right? And so there are some utilities that are going to be more expensive month to month. So again, like heat bills, cooling and heat, that kind of thing, right? That fluctuates some. So you want to kind of keep what your target is, know your target, and see where you are with that. And again, are you banking or pulling from something you've banked elsewhere maybe? All right, mortgage, maybe. Now this one confuses people. They're like, well, mortgage, that's kind of a static payment. I don't get it. Okay, well, but maybe you self escrow. Okay, and so maybe your payment, or maybe your total is $1,200 that you've given yourself. Your payment is $1,080. So you've banked then $120, right? So you have to think about it. That's what that is for. So anybody that gets our worksheets and are confused by that, think about it down there, or in those terms. Or maybe you give yourself more and you call it for the mortgage, but maybe it's for some household repairs. Some people will do that too. Okay, so then your stuff for your allowance, 75, right? A week, and it's $300 is your target, which means that if I spend 80 this week, right? This week, I'm probably only going to spend 70 because I've robbed from myself, right? Basically, I stole from myself, right? Okay, so anyway, you guys don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple. It's very simple if you break it down this way. Credit cards are amazing tools. They are seriously tools, banking tools. They are not an evil, a debt annihilator, a debt annihilator. No, we want it to be a debt annihilator. They are not a wealth annihilator. They are a debt tool to get you out of debt if you know how to run them properly. Income in, expenses out, right? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about payment timing and when this becomes relevant and when this becomes really important, especially to you maybe, right? So if I have, on the first of the month, I have, let's say I get paid bi-weekly, right? So I get paid a total of $4,000. So let's say my income is $4,000 a month, okay? So if it's $4,000 and I get paid bi-weekly, so I have $2,000 that I get paid on the first of the month, and let's say I have $2,000 that I get paid on the 15th of the month. All right, so I have to look at my month and I have to say, all right, what do I have immediately that I have to pay? And what do I have coming up before my next paycheck? Okay, so this is how you have to think about this. So if I have payday and I get $2,000, am I going to go throw it on my debt destroyer, my available income? Probably not, right? Because I have to think about some things. I have to say, okay, my income is coming to be a direct deposit right into my checking account. Comes into that checking account. I've got $2,000 that I get to do something with until the 15th. Well, I know that my mortgage is $1,000, so I have to pay that. That goes out, okay? It goes out of my checking account, got to pay that. But on the 10th, I know that I have another bill that's going to be $200, and let's say I can't pay it through my credit card. So I have to hold that out into my checking as well, right? So now I'm going to put $800 on my debt destroyer at that point, right? Because I've got my $1,000 mortgage that I held out. I've got my $200 monthly payment on the 10th that I'm holding out. So those are being held in my checking account. And the $800 is then going on to my debt destroyer because I have other expenses that are going to come off of it, okay? Now, that means that I've then allotted for that $2,000. And I've also been smart and remembered that I had this $200 that I could not pay out of my debt destroyer. So I had to hold it out into my checking account. So that means, left in my checking at this point is going to be $1,200, right? So $1,200 I have to leave in my checking, and that $800 then goes on my debt destroyer, okay? Debt destroyer, $800. All right, cool? Make sense? Awesome. All right, so now we have the 15th of the month comes along. I've got another $2,000 in pay that I get. And so I'm going to throw that all on my debt destroyer, right? Probably not. Wrong, right? I'm not going to, because there's still probably going to be some things that maybe I can't pay out of my debt destroyer if it's a credit card. Usually this is credit cards when this happens, okay? So if I know I'm getting paid $2,000 and I have a payment on the 28th of $400, and let's say I can't pay that out of my debt destroyer. Now, this could come into play with HELOCs though, and PLOCs as well. And and you got to think about that, because if you're high again at your limits, you have to know you can't go over your limit. So you have to know, what you have coming up, and you have to kind of play that mental game and think about it. Okay. So here, my debt destroyer, I'm going to put $1,600 on my debt destroyer because I have to leave that $400 right into checking so that I can pay this bill here. All right. So if I got to pay that bill. So I got to leave $400 in my checking. The $1,600 goes on that debt destroyer to help work down debt. I get paid on the first. We know that my mortgage is going to come out on the first. So I also, or maybe second, third, whatever. So I also have to then think ahead, knowing that on the first, I've got that, $1,000 I have to then pay my mortgage with, and I'm going to do this over and over and over again monthly, right? So that's where this comes into play, you guys, because you're budgeting for all of this. You're understanding what you have, what you've got coming, and what you need to do. Now, is it very complex? No, it doesn't have to be. It may look overwhelming at first, but when you break it down and you look at what you have coming and you know what you can put on your card, right? You just need to pick those out and put them where they go. All right. That's all you need to do. And the first couple of times you do this, you're going to be a little bit anxiety ridden over it, but you're going to work through it just fine. So you're going to be able to do that without a problem. All right. So I hope that I've been able to, help you guys out here and, maybe simplify some things. So let's go into a scenario here and just do an easy strategy, an easy scenario so you can see the breakdown of velocity banking one more time. Okay, and as promised, I'm back with some numbers for you just to go over the simplicity of velocity banking. And yes, I'm going to use a credit card because that is what most of you come to us with, is with credit cards. Now, if you can use a personal line of credit, if you can use a home equity line of credit or a business line of credit, you will work stuff down. You're going to work your debt down much faster because you're going to be able to put all of your income in and run all of your expenses out. And I've talked about this before. That is because you will be able to put your money into your home equity line of credit or personal line of credit, and then every penny of it, because knowing that it's linked to your checking account and money will draft from your checking account to pay your bills as needed, okay? So that means the majority of your money, your income, sits on that line of credit to lower the balance by that average daily balance, okay? The beauty of velocity banking and the beauty of this system is that with lines of credit, you are able to put your entire income into it or whatever's available to you to work down your debts because the average daily balance is what those lines are calculated on. And when you put a chunk payment in or at payments that add up to a chunk payment, right? Like micropay payments that add up to that chunk payment, you're lowering your average daily balance, which then lowers your effective interest rate. Okay, that lowers your interest rate for you. So these lines of credit that are out there for 27,000, which I'm sorry, 27%. Oh my gosh, 27%, such as my example here, you can still win over a personal loan for 7% or 7. I almost did it again, 7,000, 7%, 6%, 5%. You can win over those, you guys. You can when you work your strategy this way, because loans you can't put income into and get your pay out. You just can't. So that's why velocity banking works. Okay. So very simple, break this strategy down. You have an income here of $4,000. We have total expenses of $4,000. All right. Which means we have zero cash flow. All right. We have rent of $1,000. We have a car payment of $300, which means $1,300 in those expenses there, our rent and our car, which have to be held out of our checking account because we're using this credit card here to work down our debt. And that credit card is for $32,000. Okay, that's the balance. It's $32,000. The payment is $730, and that's not even interest in 1%, but it's $730 because a lot of times you guys are paying the bare minimum, okay? So $730 is the payment. It's at a 27% interest rate. That means it's going to take 16 years to pay this off, and it's going to cost this person $108,761 in interest. Now, this is a real example of one of our students, okay? I just pulled some numbers for you and I just threw it together, made them all round to make it easier. But this is a real live situation. They are going to pay this in 16 years, and it's going to cost them $108,761 if they continue to traditionally bank. Why would you do that? Why? Why would you do that? Again, you're doing it because number one, you don't know any other way. You haven't been taught any other way. And number two, you don't know velocity banking exists until now, or you didn't. So now you're going to learn the velocity way. Sitting in your checking account, making this $730 payment to a $32,000 credit card over 16 years, spending $108,761 in interest is ludicrous. And you know it, but you're going to do something different about that now, aren't you? Okay. So if my credit card is $32,000, my payment is $730, and I have living expenses then of $2,030. Now, the reason I'm pulling in living expenses is because I don't spend a lot of time talking about it. Living expenses are just those, right? Your gas, your utilities, okay? Your groceries, okay? Your phone bill. Your phone bill comes out of here, okay? What other living expenses? Your allowance maybe, all right? Your gym membership, okay? Whatever you have is coming out of your living expenses, all right? So that is what this represents. So what we have to work with, because we're working with a credit card, is our available income, our AI as I call it, but it's not the AI you're thinking of, it's available income. So we know that we're starting with $4,000 because that's our income, all right? And we're subtracting off the rent in the car because those I cannot pay through my credit card. So I have to hold those out and leave them in my checking account to pay those bills. Now, if any of these were payments that I couldn't pay via credit card, I'd have to add those here and hold them out of my income. But in this situation, I'm going to say that all of these are available to come out of my my income, or my living expenses are able to come out of, they're all chargeable. So in this case, all right, we are only having to hold out the $1,300. All right, so I've got $4,000 because that's my income, $1,300 because that is the total of these two, and it equals $2,700. Now, you'll notice that I didn't add the $730 in because the reason is this is my debt destroyer. This is my debt destroyer. So that means this $730 is going to come back to me as cash flow minus the interest, okay? I will put that in there because that is important. So this $730 is going to work down my debt. I don't owe it anymore because I'm well satisfied by putting my income of $2,700 onto this card. That card issuer no longer needs my measly $730 because I've just slapped down $2,700. So they're happy, right? They're happy. They've got their interest. They're happy. So in other words, I don't need to make this payment anymore because I've just put a big chunk payment in. All right. So it comes back to me. Now, my chargeable expenses are the $4,000. Okay. In this case, they're the same. There's no cash flow. If this were different, such as my example over here, where my total expenses are $3,200, then it would be $3,200, but we're working with $4,000. So I'm going to take my $4,000, I'm going to subtract my $1,300, and I'm going to subtract my chargeable, my non-chargeable expense, okay? Because it's still an expense to me. So I have to hold that out of my chargeable expenses, all right? So what's left over then is $1,970. So I have $1,970 left over, and those are my chargeable expenses now, okay? So $1,970 I can charge, the rest I cannot. So here's how this works. Here is my $32,000 that I'm starting with. I'm going to put this income in, and my income is $2,700. That drops my balance on my credit card to $29,300. But I still have living expenses and all those things that are chargeable coming out, right? So that's my $1,970. Okay, so my $1,970 are the chargeable expenses. So all of the things that I can then charge, all right? So I've got my chargeable expenses, and I have my $1,689 is my interest here. Okay, so that's my interest. Now, how did I get my interest? Well, my interest is 27%, correct? Correct. So here's how you get the interest rate, knowing that you're starting with $32,000, you're dropping it to $29,000, right? So we're not spending 27% on the $32,000. We are not spending the 27% on the $29,300. We have to take an average, right? Because it's on an average daily balance. So how do we do that? All right, so this is how you do it. You will take your handy dandy calculator, or you will do it in your head, however you want to do it, okay? And we are then going to, we are then going to take $32,000, which is our high balance. We are going to add our low balance, the $29,300, and that equals $61,300, all right? I'm then going to divide it by 2, right? Divide by 2, which is going to equal $30,650. The $30,650 then, I am going to multiply by 0.27 because it's 27% interest rate. That's going to give me $8,275. I then divide that by 12, okay? Now, why do I divide it by 12? Excuse me, that gives me my 689. Now, I divide it by 12 because the prior number was the year's worth. Okay, that's how you calculate a year's worth of interest. But we only want 1 month because we know we're going to be working this down every single month. So my 32,000 minus the 2,700 drops me to 29,300. My chargeable expenses come back in, the 1970. Here's my 1970. My interest has to be added in because I owe interest. The bank wants their money, that card issuer wants their money, and they're going to get it, right? So there's my interest, 689. Now again, it's that average. So it drops me to 31,959, or I should say it brings me back up to $31,959, okay? So I do my checks. I started with 32. I ended the month at 31,959. Have I gone up or have I gone down? Well, I've dropped my balance, so I'm going in the right direction. If you go up, something is wrong. Your differential between these numbers isn't great enough to overcome this, okay? And if you go up, you have to rework your numbers or cut, pare down, do something, all right? Now, 31,959 is month 2, 2,700 comes in, drops me to 29,259. I add in my expenses, my chargeable expenses. I add in my interest, and as you can see, it's dropped $1. I know it's not a lot, but it's dropped, and it's going to continue to drop. And that drops me down to, or brings me back up, I should say, adding those back up to 31,917. Well, is 31,917 more or less than what I started with, right? It's less than, so I'm going in the right direction. Now, let's see how much this would have cost me, okay? So let's look at this. Well, actually, let's wait. Let's do this one first, okay? Now, here you have an income of 4,000. We have total expenses of 3,200, which means my cash flow is 800. Not bad cash flow. But I still want to work this credit card, this massive credit card, which is right over here, right? This massive credit card down as much as humanly possible, okay? So my living expenses then change over here because my total expenses has changed. So if I want to work my strategy through, again, this credit card, my available income is still the same because I still owe this and have to hold this out, okay? But my chargeable expenses have changed, right? Because I take my 3,200, which is what my total expenses are. I'm subtracting out my 1,300, which is, my car and my rent. And I have to still subtract this payment, right? This credit card payment, because it's still a non-chargeable expense to me. So I can't charge it. So I have to take all my non-chargeables out to leave me with my chargeable expenses. So that means I'm at 1,170. Those are my chargeable expenses. So here's what happens. 3,200, I bring in my 2,700, drops me to 29,300, just like right here, 29,300. Here's the difference right here. 1,170 are my chargeable expenses. I'm adding in my interest. They are the same at this point, right? Now, 30, it drops me then, or I should say, I bring it back up because I dropped it to 29,300, right? I bring it back up to 31,159. My income comes back in. My expenses drops me to 28,459. My expenses of 1,170 have to then come out, my chargeable expenses, plus my interest, right? So my interest has changed here because the chargeable expenses are lower, all right? My chargeable expenses are lower. My expenses in general are lower, right? So that's why this number, it starts to, differentiate here. Now I've got 670, so my initial interest was 689, now it's 670, so it drops me to 30,299. Now, having that cash flow of 800 plus adding the 730, working this card down, means that this is going to be a very different situation than this. But when you have no cash flow and you don't have any other options, this is a great way to go. So what happens is this takes 28 months and it costs $63,901. Now, you're going to look at that and you're going to say, oh my gosh, that's a ton of money. You're right, it is. But what was the alternative? The alternative was 16 years and $108,761 in interest versus $63,901, 128 months, which is 9 years or something like that versus 16. So you've just shaved off about 6 years, haven't you? Okay. Now, when you don't have any cash flow, that's all the cash flow you have. This is a perfectly viable solution. And you've saved, let's see, how much have they saved then? over traditional banking. All right, so traditional banking was 108,761. We're going to subtract off the 63,901. $44,860 is your savings. Time equals money. You've saved time, you've saved money doing it this way. So then let's look at what happens when you do have some cash flow to work with. And in this case, it's a respectable amount of cash flow. It takes then 27 months and it costs them $10,534. What would you do, right? Would you continue to traditionally bank? Either one of these situations is beautiful. It makes so much sense when you can do this. Now, if they're negative, they can still do this. Will they save as much? No, but they're still going to save unless they're, $2,000 negative. Then you got a problem, right? Because this isn't going to overcome that. But you guys, this is why we do what we do. This is why we bring it to you. We have firsthand knowledge, firsthand experience. And so we're bringing it to you every single day. Now, again, just want to put it out there. If you guys want to do the workshop, don't forget, send me an email. Let me know you're interested in the workshop. I'll send you a link. We're working on first come, first serve. We've got one the 20th that is full. The 26th we're working on filling that one right now. And then we will do some in August, but I don't have dates for you yet because again, we're going to be gone that first week of August. So have an amazing day. And I hope that you have learned something new about the difference between what you're doing now versus what you could be doing and saving yourself in the end. Have a great day, guys. See ya.